Welcome those who are joining. Hello, Robert, Metika. As usual, we're just giving some time for people to come in before we get started. Welcome, Meta Stable, Karen. And Anthony. You're going to be here pretty soon, huh, Anthony? Maybe in about a week or two? Hello, Cleo and Yankee. Welcome. Ah, you're going to be here this Sunday. Very good. There'll be plenty of lawn mowing and Dhamma discussion for you. Hello, Robert. All right, I think we can get started. Let me share the screen and we'll do our chanting. Okay. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Savatiyang tatra ko bharanchavo bhikkhave desesami bharancharancha bharanyadancha bharanikke pancha tang sutta katamocha bhikkhave bharo panchupadana kanda tissa vachaniyang katama pancha Rupupadana kando vedanupadana kando sanya upadana kando sankarupadana kando vinyanupadana kando ayam vucchati bhikkave bharo katamocha bhikkave bharaharo puggalo tissa vachaniyang Yavyayang ayasma evang namo evang goto ayang bucchati bhikkave bharaharo katamancha bhikkave bharadanang Yayang tanha pono bhavika nandiraga sahagata tatra tatra benindini seyatidang kama tanha bhava tanha vibhava tanha idang vuchyati bhikkave bharadanang katamancha bhikkave bharanikke pannang yo tassayeva tanhaya asesa viraga nirodho chaggo patinissaggo muttiyanalayo idang vuchyati bhikkave bharanikke pannangti idang avoccha bhagava idang vatvana sugato atta parang etadavocha satta Bharahave Panchakanda Bharaharo Chapuggalo Bharadanang Dukkang Loke Bharanikke Panang Sukang Nikkipitva Garung Barung Anyang Barang Anadiya Samulang Tanhamubuye Nichato Parinibbutoti. All right, English. The burden. At Savatthi. There the Blessed One said this, Bhikkhus, I will teach you the burden, the carrier of the burden, the taking up of the burden, and the laying down of the burden. Listen to that. And what, Bhikkhus, is the burden? It should be said, the 5 aggregates subject to clinging. What 5? Form aggregate subject to clinging. Feeling aggregate subject to clinging. Perception aggregate subject to clinging. Volitional formations aggregate subject to clinging. Consciousness aggregate subject to clinging. This is called the burden. Just as an aside note, the Buddha also calls this the summation of dukkha and also identity. 5 aggregate subject to clinging are all these 3 things. Burden, dukkha, identity. Continuing on. And what, bhikkhus, is the carrier of the burden? It should be said, the person, this venerable one of such a name and clan. This is called the carrier of the burden. And what, bhikkhus, is the taking up of the burden? It is this craving that leads to renewed existence, accompanied by delight and lust, seeking delight here and there. That is, craving for sensual pleasures, craving for existence, and craving for extermination. This is called the taking up of the burden. And what, bhikkhus, is the laying down of the burden? It is the remainderless fading away and cessation of that same craving, the giving up and relinquishment of it, freedom from it, non-reliance on it. This is called the laying down of the burden. This is what the Blessed One said. Having said this, the Fortunate One, the teacher, further said this. The 5 aggregates are truly burdens. The burden carrier is the person. Taking up the burden is suffering in the world. Laying down the burden is blissful. Having laid the heavy burden down without taking up another burden, having drawn out craving with its root, one is free from hunger, fully quenched. All right, friends. Let's see who we have. Okay, Ian, welcome, Ian. And Bella and Gautam, welcome. All right, friends, welcome to yet another Monday night festival of Dhamma, the Maggasekha community's Dhammapalooza, where we have a 2-hour festival of a variety of Dhamma activities, from chanting to meditation and everything in between. So for those of you who are new, every Dhammapalooza is different in that it's community-led, it's community-guided. So when I start the Dhammapalooza, if you notice and you go on YouTube and you see it only has Dhammapalooza in the date. There's no topic because, well, I don't know the topic yet. So now is the time for, if you have a topic you'd like me to discuss, if you have any questions you'd like me to answer, if you have anything you'd like the community to discuss, you can put that in the chat. You're also welcome to talk to each other in the chat, say hello to each other, talk Dhamma with each other. This is perfectly fine. This is encouraged. You are not, you are not being disrespectful to me or anything like that. do get to know each other in the chat and do get to talk Dhamma, no problem. So we are fairly light so far. It looks like it's going to be a small Dhammapalooza. That's probably because I've been so busy. I didn't do any links and postings and things like that. So it'll be a nice, cozy Dhammapalooza. And we'll wait a minute. Of course, obviously, if nobody has any questions, I do have a sutta for us to read. I always come with a backup sutta. So let's see if anything comes up in the chat. It's a quiet evening. I am almost done with my extravaganza of Dhamma. I have the past 4 days, I have transcended just the Dhammapalooza. And using one of Ayasoma's favorite words, I have done an extravaganza of Dhamma, where for the past 3-4 days I've done anywhere between 2 to 4 hours of Dhamma teachings a day. It's been quite a busy and exhausting couple 3-4 days. And Dhammapalooza is the capstone to it. Oh, there's a question that I missed. Okay. I wonder if the chat just... I didn't see these. I think what happened was that all of a sudden a burst of chat came through. Maybe the local internet's being a little wacky. So, question from Robert. Bhante, can you talk about alms round? I've wanted to offer Ajahn Kovilo at Clear Mountain since I started attending the Saturday gathering. Well, find out what they do, find out where they go, and go there and give them some food. That's all there is to it. It's not hard. You know, probably they go to like a certain spot, you know, like Bhante and Aya, you know, during the summer, they go to like a farmer's market, right? And so they go like every Saturday. And so if you know, somebody wants to give something to Bhante and Aya, the food for the day, then they know, okay, well, let's go to the Montclair farmer's market and we'll give them some food. Simple as that. And if you have any questions, you can ask them and they can teach you. They can say, well, this is the proper way to do it. This is, you know, this is what we accept, etc., etc. Perfectly fine to ask questions of a monastic. As a matter of fact, oftentimes that's the only way they can really kind of feel free to tell you a lot of things, because we do have, you know, various things that preclude us from talking about certain things without being asked first. So it's perfectly fine to ask a question. If you have any connection with Christine Patterson, who's also from the area, you can hook up with her. Maybe she goes, and I think she might go and give them dana and things like that. That's another person. You're on the Discord, right? You can talk to her and get information from her about what to do. Robert asks, what are volitional formations? So this is a complicated topic. And there's never really a nice, easy definition for this. Because even when somebody does try to make a nice, easy definition like Bhante Sujato, then people complain about that it's not a good translation, or it's too easy, or it doesn't encompass everything. All right, so the important thing to understand here, again, as I always say, when we're talking about English words, If somebody says, Bante, what's such and such and such and such? And it's like, well, I have no idea. Is there a Pali word connected to it or not? Right? And so we have here, this is a Pali word connected to it. And so if you are somebody who's like, well, what does this mean? You go on Sutta Central and you click on it so that you can see the English and the Pali. And then you find the Pali word. Then you really try to find the definition and all the different contexts and how it works. And then you can understand what this means. So volitional formations is Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation. Bhante Sujato translates it as choices. I think Bhikkhu Bodhi actually now translates it as karma. He doesn't use volitional formations anymore. So the word here is sankhara. And the volitional formations, volition, we're talking about intention. So we're talking about an intentional action. Volition, will, intention. Formations are things that come together. That's what a sankhara is. Sankhara are things that have formed from constituent parts. Right? Everything. And so what you ask, well, what is a sankhara? Everything that you will ever experience, short of becoming awakened and having parinibbana, everything that you will experience in this life is sankhara. It's a creation. Things that have come together. This computer, the internet, your body, it's all sankhara. Now, in this very specific aspect, this is talking about sankharas of the mind. So this is why Bhante Sujato translates it as choices. So these are like volitional creations of mind. Volitional formations. Which is also essentially karma. So really, all three of those translations are perfectly valid. It's just that people have likes and dislikes towards one or the other. I wouldn't worry about it too much, Robert. Sankhara is literally, I would say it is probably the, hello, Anusha on Facebook, if you're still on there anymore. Oh, we have somebody on Twitch. Well, welcome whoever's on Twitch. Hello. Sankharas is one of the most complicated Pali words because it has probably the highest number of contextual meanings. It's a very complicated word. So don't worry about it. Welcome, Visaka. Hello. Anthony has a good question. And actually, this is something that you will hear people say, well, how come the Buddha doesn't talk a lot about this? He does in a couple places, but in general, I would say it's more an intrinsic thing than an extrinsic thing. So, Bhante, any thoughts on practicing gratitude / appreciation? So in a small sutta, the Buddha says, there are two things that are rare in the world. A person who is grateful and a person who is first in helping others. So the Buddha is telling us right then and there that being grateful for things is not our normal state of thing. It's not our normal state of mind. It's actually a rare thing. And I think that's because of how adaptable we are as humans, right? We just get used to things. Like if you spend a couple months in a tent, you come back in the world and you go into a place and you can flip a switch and lights come on. Whoa. I always just took that for granted. But if there's a solar burst from the sun that comes and knocks out all of the electricity for months or even years, you won't take it for granted anymore. It's called normalcy bias, right? You just think, well, this is just how it's always been, so this is how it's going to be. And so, and you get married to somebody, right? In the beginning, you're so grateful and it's so wonderful. But then after 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 years, it's very easy to just take it for granted. Very easy to not have gratitude for things. As much what we normally do is just complain about things. That's kind of our tendency, an underlying tendency to complain, to think negative. But actually, even I just remember reading a study just recently about how people who are grateful are actually more happy. I mean, it sounds obvious, right? But it's people who are, so basically the study was like, focus more on what you have than what you don't have. I was like, yeah, that's also pretty obvious, at least to a Buddhist, right? Focusing, oh yes, I'm so happy I have all these things. There's people in the world that would kill to be where I am and do what I'm doing. Right? So many people would love to be able to just, flip a switch and have light. Go to a bathroom and flush a toilet. All kinds of things like that. But, you go through a period of time where it's like, oh, I'm so grateful. And then that fades. Just like when you come back from a meditation retreat and you feel so zealous and so, oh, I'm going to practice forever. And then that fades. It's just the nature of things. Right? It's just the nature of things that gratitude doesn't come easy to us. So we do need to practice it. We do need to reflect on it. And I think that's a good thing. Like, where in the suttas where the Buddha says, when you see somebody who's suffering, you reflect, I too have gone through that experience. When you see somebody who's doing, having a good time, you say, I too have gone through that experience. One of the main things, if you're a Buddhist, that you can be so grateful for is that you created the karma in the past that has have you be born as a human right now. Not too long after a Buddha has arisen in the world, so that his teachings are still here. That's one hell of a thing to be grateful for. I am doubly grateful that I was also able to become a monastic. That was not something that I ever took for granted. Right? And there are just people who arise in the world who maybe the desire to become a monastic arises in their mind, but for whatever reason they're unable to. That happens. And so I still, to this day, I have not lost my gratitude for being able to be a monastic. That I found somebody to ordain me. And that I now, even as a nomad monastic that's by myself, have people that support me. It's a lot of things to be grateful for. So it's something that you could do, like if you want to do Sila Nusati. When you practice Sila Nusati, you can practice Gratitude Nusati. As a matter of fact, let me see. I'm gonna real quick check on the Pali. Let's see what the Pali word. Oh, Katanyuta. There you go. That's a Pali word that most of us are familiar to. So Katanyuta Nusati. Reflecting on what you're grateful for. There you go. I think I've just created a new practice. All right. One hell of a guy. Do you think Theravada Buddhists can be helped on the path through studying Mahayana scriptures such as the Prajnaparamita Suttas? If so, what would be some examples of how? I couldn't give you any examples. I think somebody could. That's not my experience, so I can't really speak from experience on there. I think it depends on the person's personality, and a variety of other factors. Yeah, I guess that's what all I have to say about that. I think it's possible, but I don't know that any examples would come up for me to think about. Robert, this is wonderful. This is something I say all the time, right? It says, we are crazy fortunate to do what we're doing now, to be able to turn on a machine and communicate live with a monk from your own home and connect with others. Unique to this time in history. Yes. This is why I say this is like one of the best times to be a Buddhist, especially if you're like as a convert Buddhist, because this is like the only time in history where somebody who's looking into Buddhism can actually choose what type of Buddhism they want to be a part of. Before modern times, you just whatever Buddhism you came across in the world is the Buddhism that you liked or you didn't like. Now you can choose. All right, just looking at the chat. Robert says, can you clarify the four nutriments? I don't find SN 2012.63 particularly helpful. Well, I don't see a bunch of questions lined up. Why don't we read it? Let's see. The suttas I have in my back pocket can always wait for another time. 12.63. Oh, did we read this? Maybe we didn't read this yet. Yeah, we did. Oh no! I think we're gonna read this next Suttas Monday. Oh, the child's flesh sutta. All right. Yes. So let me share screen. A child's flesh. At Savatthi, mendicants, there are these four fuels. They maintain sentient beings and have been born Let's see. Can you see that? Does it pop up? Oh, it does pop up. I like it so that you can see. So this word here, ahara, is a word the Buddha mostly uses in relation to the 5 hindrances. How we feed the 5 hindrances and how we starve the 5 hindrances. So ahara here is taking food, nutriment, sustenance, fuel, etc. They maintain sentient beings that have been born and help those that are about to be born. What for? Solid food, whether coarse or fine. Contact is the second. Passa, this is the contact from dependent origination. This is the contact of the senses making contact with the sense objects. The eye making contact with the form. The ear making contact with the sound, etc. Mental intention. So this is mano. Mano is mind. Sanchetana is another word for intention. And consciousness is the fourth. There are these 4 fuels that maintain sentient beings that have been born and help those that are about to be born. Right? So if you look at dependent origin, we're in the dependent origination section, right? So we see with the arising of ignorance comes the arising of sankharas. The arising sankharas, vijnana, consciousness. So consciousness is a support for the being to be born, to come into being. With the arising of consciousness, namarupa, name and form. The arising in name and form, namarupa pachya. Well, I'm blanking out. Salayatana, there it is. 6 senses. The arising of 6 senses, passa, contact. So we're in the dependent origination section. So you need to understand this in terms of when this arises, that arises. When this ceases, that ceases. And how should you regard solid food? Suppose a couple who were husband and wife set out to cross a desert, taking limited supplies. They had only one child, dear and beloved. As the couple were crossing the desert, their limited quality of supplies would run out, and they'd still have the rest of the desert to cross. Then it would occur to that couple, our limited quantity of supplies has run out, and we still have the rest of the desert to cross. Why don't we kill our only child, so dear and beloved, and prepare dried and spiced meat? Then we can make it across the desert by eating our child's flesh. Let not all 3 perish. Logical deduction in a survival situation, I suppose. Then that couple would kill their only child, so dear and beloved, and prepare dried and spiced meat. They'd make it across the desert by eating their child's flesh. And as they'd eat the flesh, they'd beat their breasts and cry, "Where are you, our only child? Where are you, our only child?" Going down your throat, basically. What do you think, mendicants? Would they eat that food for fun, indulgence, adornment, or decoration? No, sir. Wouldn't they eat that food just so that they can make it across the desert? Yes, sir. And that way, this is how you should regard solid food. So this is a connection with, you go to a monastery every day. Before they eat the food, the monks will do the chant. I eat this food not for adornment, not for enjoyment, not for making my body stronger, not for any reason other than the continuation of this body. And so the Buddha is saying, well, yeah, I mean, the parents that killed their child and are eating them, they're not going to be too elated about it. And so just like as they're going to just eat the food just to survive, this is how you should view food. Instead of getting attached to it and wrapped up in it and, oh, I like this food and I don't like that food. So the Buddha is saying this is a very, very strong, poignant simile of how you should view food. Right? So that you don't have too many attachments to it. Continuing on. When solid food is completely understood, desire for the 5 kinds of sensual stimulation is completely understood. When desire for the 5 kinds of sensual stimulation is completely understood, the noble disciple is bound by no fetter that might return them again to this world. That's pretty powerful. The Buddha is saying that if you could fully understand the desire for food, then you can become awakened. And this is, those of you who've been around me long enough, you say, I joke because of my food issues. I say, by the time I get over my food issues, I'll probably be right after become awakened. Right? So the Buddha is calling me out right here. If you understand the desire for food, you understand the desire for engaging in sensual pleasures. The 5 kinds of sensual stimulation. These are pleasant experiences through the 5 senses. The Buddha says that the layperson, the householder, is endowed with the 5 chords of sensual pleasure. That's another way of translating it. That's how Bhikkhu Bodhi translates it. And how should you regard contact as fuel? Suppose there were a flayed cow. If she stands by a wall, the creatures on the wall will bite her. If she stands under a tree, the tree will bite. The creatures in the tree will bite her. If she stands in some water, the creatures in the water will bite her. If she stands in the open, the creatures in the open will bite her. Wherever that flayed cow stands, the creatures there would bite her. I say that is how you should regard contact as fuel. When contact for fuel has completely understood. So this is, in this example, this simile, we can see that this cow cannot go anywhere for escape. This cow is being, no matter where it's going, what it's doing, those beings are biting. And just so, because we have the 6 senses, we are immersed in, what do I always say? The kam ogha, the flood of sensual pleasures. We're totally immersed in all of these possible pleasant experiences. Just like that cow keeps getting bitten. Because no matter where the cow goes, the bugs are going. No matter where we go, as long as we have this body and these 6 senses, we have contact. Our eye, as long as it's open, is continuously contacting something. Our ear is continuously contacting something. The only way that ends is when having a body ends. When contact as fuel is completely understood, the 3 feelings are completely understood. When the 3 feelings, pleasant, unpleasant, and neither painful nor pleasant, when the 3 feelings are completely understood, a noble disciple has nothing further to do. And how should you regard mental intention as fuel? Suppose there was a pit of glowing coals, deeper than a man's height, filled with glowing coals that neither flame nor smoke. Then a person would come along who wants to live and doesn't want to die, who wants to be happy and recoils from pain. All right, just checking in on the chat. Seems like we've gained some people, a good amount of people. So welcome everybody. We're just reading through our sutta here. So this is a person who wants to be happy and doesn't want to have pain. And he sees a glowing pit, and two strong men would grab them by the arms and drag them towards the pit of glowing coals. Then that person's intention, aim, and wish would be to get far away. Why is that? Because that person would think, if I fall into that pit of glowing coals, that will result in my death or deadly pain. I say that this is how you should regard mental intention as fuel. Another interesting one. The Buddha is really hard hitting with the similes in this, right? And that's because the Buddha wants it like a jolt. Right? The Buddha is jolting you with the severity of these similes. I'm thinking of how to connect mental intention with the simile. Being thrown into the hot coals. Let's see, has anyone said anything yet? Oftentimes when I'm thinking and trying to figure something out, somebody will come up with something. Could also just be that I'm tired. I'm experiencing a mental block. If I fall into mental intention, that will result in my death and deadly pain. That might be where it's going. A string of mental intentions. Yes. Oh, right. And Robert chimes in. So you see where I get lost, confused. It's not just me. Yeah, well, sometimes you come across these things in the suttas, right? Sometimes, even if you've read all of the suttas like I have, right? There are things that are not repeated a lot so that you don't get a bunch of iterations of it and you understand it better. So mano sancetana is not something that's used a lot. So my mind is, kind of, my neurons are firing, making connections and figuring things out. Watching Bhante in live time. Let's continue on with the sutta, though, so we at least finish it out. And we'll see what arises. When mental intention is fuel, is completely understood. Now, this could be, when mental intention is fuel, this is your intention towards desiring pleasant experiences. That is an obvious way that you fuel your continued existence. When mental intention as fuel is completely understood, the three cravings are completely understood. When the three cravings, what are the three cravings? Craving for sensual desire, craving for existence, craving for non-existence. So this is connected to craving. Sometimes you just have to read a little bit ahead and you might get a clue. It makes it a little bit easier to understand. When mental intention as fuel is completely understood, the three cravings are completely understood. And when you come across the sutta, right, in 2 weekends, I'm going to be doing the Sutta 101 class, the Zoom retreat, right? This is what I say. Like, when you come across the sutta and you don't know, well, try to see if a monastic that you trust knows and says something about it. That's why I'll go to Bhante Analayo or Bhante Sujato. Yeah, I'll say, let me Google, see if they say anything about it, right? On a YouTube video or writing or something like that, or Bhante Analayo, who knows, it's good to, and sometimes what I found, they don't even really know either because nobody knows, because it's pretty esoteric. But somebody who has been studying the suttas for multiple decades has made enough neuronal connections that they can make an educated guess, right? They've experienced enough of the sutta that their educated guess might be the closest you're going to get to an actual answer. And that's okay. When mental intention for fuel is completely understood, the three cravings are completely understood. So this is understanding the second noble truth. When the three cravings are completely understood, the noble disciple has nothing further to do, I say. And how should you regard consciousness as fuel? Suppose they were to arrest a bandit, a criminal, and present him to the king, saying, "Your Majesty, this is a bandit, a criminal. Punish him as you will." The king would say, "Go, my men, and strike this man in the morning with 100 spears." The king's men did as they were told. Then at midday, the king would say, "Go, my men. How is that man?" "He's still alive, your Majesty." The king would say, "Go, my men, and strike this man in the middle of the day with 100 spears." The king's men did as they were told. Now, this is also from another sutta. I don't necessarily remember 100% the context of the sutta, but the being stricken by 100 spears in the morning, the during the day and the evening, this is from another sutta. This is something that you will see multiple times. Go, my men, and strike this man in the middle of the day with 100 spears. The king's men did as they were told. Then late afternoon, the king would say, "My men, how is that man?" "He's still alive, your Majesty." The king would say, "Go, my men, and strike this man in late afternoon with 100 spears." The king's men did this as they were told. What do you think, mendicants? Would that man experience pain and distress from being struck with 300 spears a day? Sir, that man would experience pain and distress from being struck with 1 spear, let alone 300. I say that this is how you should regard consciousness as fuel. When consciousness as fuel is completely understood, name and form is completely understood. When name and form is completely understood, a noble disciple has nothing further to do, I say. Consciousness as being struck by 300 spears. First thing that comes to mind is fully and truly understanding how things are sankhara dukkha, right? That everything in experience is suffering when clung to, right? So you're getting, punctured by these spears. Consciousness is having all of these things coming into your conscious awareness. Like when you're meditating and the monkey mind's going all over the place. And that's like exhausting. That's painful. But when somebody has abandoned this and is not getting struck by spears, their consciousness is abandoned, then there's no more suffering. Not from one, not even from one spear, not alone 300. All right, so we have some commentary. People have been making commentary. Let me see. Elaine says, "No pressure, Bante. We love you." No pressure. No, this is actually something that everybody should become comfortable with. Allowing your mind to think, right? Instead of being like, right? When most people, when they give give a speech, they use these words. I forgot exactly what they're called. Not intermittent. They're words that are they're little things that come up to allow your mind to think. Right? No. If you can allow yourself to think, and you're okay with silence and okay with people waiting, giving people good training and patience, that's a good thing. Not worried, and they're not worried about it at all. All right. As a matter of fact, I'm actually I wish it almost happened more so I could make you all have develop patience and be a good role model. Okay. All right, here's a question. We are coming close to the end of the first hour, though, so we should start looking towards when we're going to do our meditation. Let me remove share of the sutta since we're done with it. Why is it impolite to point your feet at a Buddha image? Seems like it's kind of hard not to do it if you're doing anything related to it. No, it's not that hard. So this is essentially something that goes back to at least ancient India and other places, and probably even earlier. Right? This is related to people walking around barefoot or with sandals and their feet being muddy and dirty, and shoving your feet at somebody. That would be kind of insulting if they're muddy and dirty, right? And so I think it comes from just very basic. A lot of these kind of things that seem silly to us today, and this is just in society in general. People will even look at something and they'll say, "How can this and such be? This is whatever, misogynistic or this or that or whatever it is." But actually, if you look at why something came to be, oftentimes it actually came to be for a really good reason. It's like an example of bhikkhuni can't go wandering by themselves. Wow, that sounds misogynistic. No, it was because bhikkhunis were being raped and killed. Yeah, well, that sounds actually, obviously right now, most bhikkhunis walk around in America. They're not going to get raped and killed, but, in ancient times, even bhikkhus were being raped and killed. This is, let alone bhikkhunis, obviously. But, so when something like this comes up, you reflect on, I think it's called, what's it called? Somebody's fence. I forgot what it's called. You go up to a fence. You walk. You're in the middle of nowhere, and you go up to a fence. And do you think, well, this is a stupid fence, and you just destroy it? Or do you think there might be a reason for this fence to exist? And so somebody will go into politically, they'll say, Well, the conservative would say, well, there might be a reason for this fence to exist. The liberal or progressive would say, destroy the fence. Right? But there actually really might be a reason for this fence to exist. So there might be a reason for this this very ancient custom of not pointing your feet at the Buddha image to exist. And even if your mind does say, well, that's kind of silly, I'm not walking around barefoot in mud anymore. Well, if you're in a place where that's an expected custom, you can reflect, well, this is a good opportunity to practice mindfulness. How do I maneuver my body so that my feet don't face the monk or the Buddha? How do I do that? Right? And sometimes you'll see, even if like people are having a hard time, painful with their legs, you can watch them, what they'll do. And I've even done this. They'll do like this. It's like, oh, my feet aren't pointing at the Buddha or at the monk. They're just pointing out this way over here. You can't see my feet, so they'll just be like this. They'll do something like that. So it becomes like a mindful exercise of kaya nupassana, of body, understanding the body. It's a good thing. So don't always, when things like this come up, don't, especially like for Westerners in more traditional settings, that might come in our minds a lot. Well, this is kind of silly. Why are they doing this and why are they doing that? You reflect, well, at one time, even though it doesn't seem like it has any logical reasoning for you, at one time, there was a logical reasoning. And even maybe they have forgotten why. Right? There's like certain, like there's a like water pouring ceremony, right? Like I was like, well, why are we pouring water in this? It doesn't make much sense. I don't get it. And somebody explained it to me. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Actually, that's pretty nice. And then I remember I was in the Sanghahola Bhavana with a bunch of people. And I was explaining it to a couple of Westerners that were there. And there were this Sri Lankan couple there. And they said, Bhante, I never knew that. And that was part of their culture. Right? So even, things can even be passed down across the centuries. And the original meaning can be lost. And so that makes it easy for the next generation to be like, well, this is stupid. Why are we doing this? We'll just stop doing it. But if they knew the meaning, they knew the reason, they might say, oh, no, okay, well, this is actually good. We should do this. Robert says, oh, so it's not just feet, but specifically the soles of the feet? Yeah. Yeah. So like if your feet's on the ground and your toes are pointing, that's fine. There's no issue there. Metastable says feet can be a very disrespect weapon. Oh yeah, you could go like in even in places that have ancient culture like the Middle East, throwing your shoes at somebody is still like, oh, this person I have contempt for this person. We're gonna throw a shoe at them. Oh, good morning, Malika. Welcome. Our Australian friend. So Jay Collis says, I posted a question earlier about how you understand the domain of nothingness, the formless attainment, especially as described in MM106. I don't know specifically how it's described in MM106, but the formless attainments are really something that I don't really have a lot of experience with and I don't really focus on. So like I know what other monastics have told me and I know what the suttas say about them. but they're not a prominent thing in my practice, nor are they something needed for awakening, right? The Buddha includes them, but they're not something that you need to develop. There's something that existed before the time of the Buddha, along with kasina meditation. There's something that you don't need to go through the 4 jhanas to get to, even though the Buddha, in the Buddhas, in the suttas, oftentimes you'll see jhana 1, 2, 3, 4, then the formless attainments. But they're understood to be something that you can, the Buddhist teachers, Alara Kalama and Udaka Ramaputta, they taught these formless attainments, and the Buddha mastered them, right? But they were not sama samadhi, right? They're not right. They're not jhana. They're not right jhana, and they're not. Oh, no. Actually, no. I'm wrong. In the the man from Attavak, Majjhima Nikaya number 11, maybe it is, where the Buddha does say that they can be used for awakening. So no, I'm wrong about that. I redact that statement. But they're not required. So, this is, what is it? Understanding that there is nothing. One puts their mind on the domain of nothingness. And then you enter into that domain of nothingness. Anthony is pointing towards Bhante Analio. Bhante Analio is much more qualified to answer that than I am. So that's probably a good thing, a good person to check out. Dallas has a question. How to respond well to people not using rational logical argument to bad takes and such. Just ignoring people seems a bit disrespectful, but responding to it doesn't lead anywhere as well. So I think it's important to understand that no human being is an entirely rational person, right? There's no mind that's entirely rational. Even the Buddha splits the mind into what? Chitta, mano, vijnana. Chitta is the emotional aspect of the mind. Mano is the rational aspect of the mind. Vijnana is consciousness. So we have to understand that, a logical, rational argument won't work sometimes, maybe even most of the times. If the person is prone to strong emotion, then a rational, logical argument will definitely not work. Right? A rational, logical argument is something that has to be taken, you take somebody down that argument step by step. And if they're not following you down that path, it's not going to work. Just ignoring people seems disrespectful. Well, it depends on what you mean by ignoring. I mean, I'm assuming you're talking about like while you're actively engaged with somebody. Sometimes if the conversation is not worth having, disengage. Do it in a polite way. Like, I remember I have to do X, Y, Z, or I have to be somewhere by such and such time, or what, just disengage. Oftentimes, that's probably the best thing. You do it in a skillful way. If you have to respond, then you should really think twice before you act once. Right? Really think. What should I say? And how might this person take it? What should I say so that it's said in a way that's most conducive to this person accepting it? Not an easy thing. But the best way to do it. Hello, Briar. Welcome. Shrumo says, I had an experience of spaciousness accompanied with feverish feeling of discomfort in my last meditation. It was the same feeling I got when I have fever dreams. Is this spoken of in any text? Not that I know of. I mean, it could be, there's an unlimited amounts of various experiences and combinations of experiences you can have when you meditate. When we have these kind of experiences, it's natural to want to have to know. Like, I remember I had an experience and, I was like, okay, I'm going to write this down and remember this because I'm going to Bhavana in about 3 weeks. And I went to Bhavana. I was like, Bhante, what does this mean? Is there a name for this? Like, we want to have a name. We want to have a specific thing so we can know more about it. But most of the time, it's just an experience that it's arisen. And the most wise thing to do is to observe it, investigate it, and let it go. I mean, you can ask multiple monastics, see what they say. You'll get a bunch of different answers, and you might be able to pick some tidbits of wisdom from each one. I mean, feverish, that, like, one, depending on what you mean by a feeling of spaciousness, that could be nothing, or it could be the dimension of infinite space. I mean, who knows? This is something that's complicated to understand. Oh, yeah, the chat did just jump big time. All of a sudden, there was like 5 or 6 chats that just came up. All right. What is the dimension of infinite space like? I've not experienced it personally, so I couldn't tell by experience, but knowing that space is infinite, one enters and remains in the dimension of infinite space. You know that space is infinite. Oh, well, okay. Well, Dallas, as a follow-up, if the excuse to disengage is not true, like I have to be somewhere, even though, no, you shouldn't lie about it. You shouldn't make it up. Even if you have to say, it's like, say whatever you need to say. It's not about making up an excuse. It's just, figuring out what's the most skillful way to end this conversation. And lying is not skillful, because if they find out that you lied, then it's never gonna be they're gonna know that you're a liar, and they're not gonna trust you, and your conversations and interactions with them in the future is gonna be worse. Boy, we have a spate of questions in the middle. It's pretty rare that in the middle of Dhammapalooza, all kinds of questions start coming up. But we'll go for a little bit more, then we'll do our meditation, and then we can end with some Dhammapada verses. So Robert says, I had an experience of feeling sutta during Saturday gathering at Clear Mountain last week. Would you speak a bit about the place of faith in your own practice in Buddhism generally? It was a major turning point in my practice to understand sutta as religious faith, not just trust, and energized my practice quite a bit. So yeah, I mean, there is a tendency in Western circles to minimize sutta to just confidence, and this is not only the case. Sutta is like a faith, like what we would call blind faith. Sutta also is a confidence, and it also is a trust. Right? When you have true faith in something, you have confidence and trust in it. Most people who have some kind of interest in Buddhism and actually want to at least try it, they have at least a little bit of faith. Well, they think, well, this Buddha sounds like a wise person. And there's all these monks, they seem like wise people. Maybe I'll give it a shot. That's a leap of faith. Because you don't know. You really don't know in your own experience. You just know what you've heard from pop culture, from history, whatever. But you have, some faith, and you give it a shot. You take the leap. And then from there, maybe you hear the Dhamma, and that gives you zeal. It's like, oh, this is right. Now I should practice. And then, as you read the suttas, and as the Buddha keeps really calling out your actions and your psychology, right? The Buddha, like so many times reading the suttas in the beginnings, oh, the Buddha called it right. Oh, the Buddha knows me. Right? When that happens, and then you put the teachings into practice, and through your own experience, you see the validity in them, then naturally your faith and your confidence and your trust grows. That's what happened to me. Right? To the point where I became a monk. Most of you know that I can't say that I 100% believe in rebirth, but I'm about 95% or so. The rest of it, I'll probably have to be able to see it from my own, just like, they do in the suttas. But because I've come so far and the Buddha's always been right, and this path has been so beneficial, I have enough faith in the Buddha now, I give him the benefit of the doubt. I essentially live like I believe rebirth exists. I realize that. There's this very interesting clinical psychologist who was asked if he believes in God, and he says, well, That's a hard question because it's a deep question. But when pushed, he says, well, I realize I act like I believe, I live like I believe in God. And when I heard that, I was like, whoa, wait a second. That's exactly how I live. Like I live like I believe that I'm going to be born again. So I better do my best to not have to be born again. Right? I live like the Buddha's teaching is 100% true. And it's been true for me so far. So I have faith for the rest. And there are, and the Buddha also talks about in the suttas 2 types of people: Dhamma followers and faith followers. Faith followers can become sotipanna without having ever meditated. Just on their power of their faith, they can become stream enterers. Frankly, I kind of wish I was a faith follower because maybe I'd be a stream enterer by now. Right? But I don't have that in me. I'm not a strong faith follower. Right? Just to take things on faith because I have, trust in that somebody, that the Buddha was awakened, etc. That's not me. I'm a Dhamma follower. And, that's also okay. Dhamma follower has to put it into practice and see it for themselves. The Dhamma follower is like the kid that keeps putting their hand on the stove. They have to feel the pain themselves. That's me. That's the way it is. And but I've met people who I feel like really are actual faith followers. Like I do believe that this is something that somebody can be. So maybe Robert, maybe you're a faith follower. Maybe that that aspect of your mentality, your being, connects more with faith. No problem. That's good. Whether you're a faith follower or a Dhamma follower. Although, keep in mind, a faith follower can become a stream enterer without meditating, but you're not becoming an awakened being. You have to see it for yourself. But you can get if you're a faith follower, you can get a pretty big head start, I think. Shrumo is hooked on Dhammapalooza. Well, thank you, Shrumo. I'm glad my my answers are beneficial to you. Visid says, "Oh, with data, no less." I see data. As monastics, are monastics consistent about what qualifies as jhana? No. Even in Theravada, you can go to Bhante Ji, Ajahn Brahm, Thanissaro Bhikkhu, and you'll see, like, wait a second, that all doesn't sound like the same jhana. It's the way it is. So no. What do you do? Get into jhanas and find out for yourself. That's what you do. Are monastics consistent about what qualifies jhana? If someone were to describe their meditation to many monastics, would most of them be able to say if it was or wasn't jhana? I've come across monastics that say somebody's in jhana when, according to the suttas, they're not in jhana. Some people make jhana out to be something really easy, and other people make jhana out to be like, well, first you have to be alone for 40 days, and then you have to only be meditating, and then nothing. You're like, it's not that hard either, I don't think. I think that there is a middle ground. But yeah, I wouldn't rely on a teacher telling you jhana. Right? If you have a question as to whether you're in jhana, you're probably not in jhana. If you read the suttas of what jhana is, then that gives you a little bit of a framework, some guidelines of Am I in jhana? Jhana is a very deluding thing. All you need to do is go to the Bhavana Society during the jhana retreat. The people that come, deluded beyond belief. Oh, when I'm in fourth jhana, such and such and such. You're not in fourth jhana. You're deluded. And you can tell because how they act outside of jhanas is quite deluded. Right? You know, they're not in jhanas. Practice and investigate and develop your practice. You can read the suttas, read what the Buddha says, the framework for jhanas. And when you get into it, you'll know. At least once I've gotten very, very close. I don't think I've ever actually been in jhanas. And even if I did, I couldn't tell you because monks can't tell you if they've been in jhanas, but or if they're any kind of attainment. But Jay Kala says, how does Bhante Ji describe jhana? From the suttas. Read Beyond Mindfulness in Plain English if you want to know. Or you could even look it up on YouTube. I have recordings. I while I was there, when I was recording the retreats there, Bhante Ji has lots of talks. So if you type in Bhante Ji jhana, something should come up. All right, let's do our meditation. Well, Visit, I wouldn't say it's clear, but at least it is honest. Okay. So set your body up in a comfortable and stable position. Whatever works for you. We'll take some time to scan through the body so that we can bring our mind slowly from the external to the internal. And you can practice observing how the posture of the body impacts how long you can sit in comfort. Bring your attention to your feet. By bring attention, this means to focus in on any sensation or feeling that arises, such as the feet pressing against the floor or the cushion. Focus in on that feeling. Bring your awareness up through the ankles to the calves. As you're scanning through a part of the body, if you're having trouble connecting with a sensation, you can prompt yourself by asking, what do I see? What do I feel? Bring your awareness up through the knees and into the thighs. As you're scanning through, if you notice any small feelings of discomfort or the position of your body causing an imbalance in your posture, then adjust your posture as needed. It's better to spend time moving, adjusting, and squiggling around now than doing so during the meditation. Bring your awareness through the thighs to the hips and pelvis. Observe how the position of the hips and pelvis impacts your posture, both the lower body and up the spine. Move your awareness up the spine through the abdomen and the chest, checking to see that the spine is in its neutral position. If the spine is bending or slouching here or there, that will cause back pain as you sit for a longer period. Bring your awareness to your shoulders. Check to make sure they're hanging loosely, not scrunched up and tight. And then down through to the elbows and hands. Observe how the position of the elbows and hands impacts your spine, your posture. And finally, bring your awareness to your head. Check that the head is not leaning and slouching here and there. The chin parallel to the floor. When you're done setting up your body in a comfortable and stable position, let the body go and take 3 deep breaths. And then let the breath go. From here on in, try not to manipulate or control the breath in any way. This body has been breathing from the moment you were born, and will continue to do so until the second you die. It doesn't need you to do its job. Your job is to simply observe, investigate, and abide with the breath. As this body breathes in, this body breathes out. When your mind gets distracted away, whether by getting bored with the breath and running away, or if an external distraction arises like a sound, and the mind gets attached to it. When this happens, after a time, you'll slowly start to become aware that you've been taken away from the breath. Your mindfulness will slowly start to come back. At that point, acknowledge that you've been taken away from the breath. Bring back your mindfulness in full. Practice letting go of the distraction by neither getting attached to it, excited, thinking about it more, or getting agitated and pushing it away. Try to just give it no energy or attention. Let it be. And then return to the breath. Whenever distracted away, acknowledge, let go, and return. For the rest of this meditation, we'll practice reflecting on what we are grateful for. Maybe for some of you, just the thought about hearing me say what we're grateful for, things pop up in your mind. With some, you might need to just prompt yourself. Ask this question of yourself. What am I grateful for? And see what pops up. What comes up to the mind? Are you grateful for people in your life? Or even people who have died and moved on? But the fact that they were in your life, even still, you have so much gratitude. Or maybe grateful due to ripening of good karma in this life. Reflect on what you're grateful for. And even try to find more subtle things, the things you take for granted. Spend this time examining gratitude and thankfulness in your own life and experience. Maybe even when people express gratitude to you and how that made you feel. Reflecting on gratitude can be a practice that lowers our craving and our attachment. It can also be a practice that puts our mind in the right place, understanding the fragility of this life, giving us an urgency to live and practice well. All right, friends. A couple people talking about gratitude for the path and the Dhamma. Yes, so much gratitude. That's why I do this. It's because I want to share the Dhamma. I want to share this powerful practice with other people because I have so much gratitude for it. That's why I put so much energy and effort into Bhavana Society for the years, because so much gratitude and thankfulness for the place that I wanted to, help continue and help other people who came. This is what we do when you really feel grateful for something. But let's read some Dhammapada, shall we not? Let's got a couple minutes of that, then we'll do our final sharing of merits and business and close out. Okay. So we are up to old age. All right, it's on the screen. Very good. Hello, Sindhu. Welcome. Okay. When this world is ever ablaze, why this laughter? Why this jubilation? Shrouded in darkness, will you not see the light? Behold this body, a painted image, a mass of heaped up sores, and firm, full of hankering, of which nothing is lasting or stable. Fully worn out is this body, a nest of disease and fragile. This foul mass breaks up, for death is the end of life. These dove-colored bones are like gourds that lie scattered about in autumn. Having seen them, how can one seek delight? I guess the Buddha didn't really like gourds. And also seeing bones around, like in a charnel ground. This city, i.e., the body, is built of bones, plastered with flesh and blood. Within are decay and death, pride and jealousy. Even gorgeous royal chariots wear out, and indeed this body too wears out. But the Dhamma of the good does not age. Thus the good make it known to the good. The man of little learning grows old like a bull. He grows only in bulk, but his wisdom does not grow. Through many a births in samsara have I wandered in vain, seeking the builder of this house. Repeated birth is indeed suffering. O house builder, thou art seen. You will not build this house again, for your rafters are broken and your ridgepole shattered. My mind has reached the unconditioned. I have attained the destruction of craving. Those who in youth have not led the holy life or have failed to acquire wealth languish like old cranes in the pond without fish. Those who in youth have not led the holy life or have failed to acquire wealth lie sighing over the past like worn out arrows shot from a bow. All right. I think we're good for now. We can save the next one for next week. Okay, friends, let's do some business before we do our final sharing of merits and closing out. So on the screen here, if you'd like to keep in contact and see what's going on with the Maggasekha community, you can go to maggasekha.org. On maggasekha.org, on the top right, you can put your email in and you'll get notified anytime I post something new. Anytime there's a new YouTube video or something like that, or an article, whatever I post up, you will get an email saying what's going on. So you can go to maggasekha.org. You can also see a calendar of events when I do the live streams, the retreats, all that stuff. You can see that at maggasekha.org. We also have an online community on the Discord program. This community is focused with both study and practice on the early texts, on the suttas. So this is not a general Buddhist community, but if it is something that you are interested in learning about Buddhism in relation to the early text and the suttas, then you can send an email, to the email listed, maggasekha@gmail.com, and ask for an invite. And you can come on in. You can also, on the YouTube channel, you can click subscribe if you haven't already, and you can click on the bell so then you get notified. Now that I have the live streaming service, when I make the live stream like a week before, it'll come up. And when you're on YouTube and you're in like the home page or whatever, the page that shows you your recommendations, you might see Dhammapalooza, and you can click on notify me, and then it'll notify you. It's neat in that way. And so what else is there? Mondays is Dhammapalooza. Wednesdays, I haven't done it for a while, but Wednesdays is usually Ask a Bhante. So if you have any questions that you'd like me to ask and answer in a video for your benefit or for the benefit of other people, please send me your questions, and I'll keep those videos going. All right, I think that's it. Let's share the screen here for you. All right. We'll do our sharing of merits and close out. Dukkha patta chani dukkha, bhaya patta chani bhaya, soka patta chani soka, hontu sabbe pipaniyo, ettavata cha mehi sampatang punya sampatang, sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya, akasatta jabumata deva naga mahiddika, punyang tang anumoditva charang rakkantu sasanang. May the suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we've thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas, nagas, and yakas of mighty power, share in this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddhist dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, friends. So we come to the end of another Dhammapalooza. Until next time, may you have a spiritually successful and peaceful week. Sukhi Hotu, which means may you be happy and at ease. Practice well and be well.